So, guys, I want to talk about AEW, and I want to talk about like 10 things that suck about their house shows. And definitely, I'm going to include some constructive criticisms as well, because that's always very important. So, the first thing that I do not like about the house show is that they always do pyro. That sometimes if you always do pyro, it doesn't feel really special. And then the other thing too is that it's also very very expensive. And also, like there's also people who kind of complain about, just how it really hurts their ears. Like sometimes you don't always need to do that. Like for example, if you're going to do Rampage, maybe you don't do pyro, or maybe like there's certain wrestlers like Brian Cage. Why does he have like pyro coming out? Or somebody like Chris Statlander. Like that's also another issue is that I think they have excessive pyro, or sometimes they may have pyro for people that's not that don't really need it. Like why does Brian Cage have pyro? Shouldn't like Stuart Strickland have that instead? So pick and choose when you use your pyro for your wrestlers and your shows. The next thing that I would say is the next thing that I would say is turning on their monitors. That's kind of one of the biggest issues that I have is that sometimes if you don't have a good seat, you actually just don't are not able to like you're not able to like see everything really, and that can be really really frustrating. And also too that there are Ticketmaster issues. So sometimes there are people who get good seats and who want to get good seats, and then there's like issues and glitches and the system acting faulty, so you end up getting a crappy seat. So sometimes, when you have monitors, that's good. And then also too, I noticed like with WWE, they don't like have monitors as well, for the NXT show. But it's also very, very important because if you have it, that's a better expense than the pyro, because then people are able to watch. And then also too, when it comes to the monitors and the microphones, like sometimes the audio is not playing, so that's not good. The third thing that I would say is the Ticketmaster issue. There are a bunch of Ticketmaster issues. For example, that like I've mentioned before, that if you buy AEW tickets, sometimes what happens is that you may select a seat, and then when you try to cash it out, it'll say actually the ticket was actually sold. Or sometimes what they do is that now instead of now what happens is you have to click on the Ticketmaster thing and actually pick out the seat within the arena. And what happens is that they did it differently. So it's always like they're always changing their formatting. And they also make you do verification codes. And sometimes you can enter your verification codes correctly for your credit cards. And then sometimes they say it's still denied, or you have to call your company and tell them that you have to do an approval. So there's always like monkey wrenches to avoid you from getting your seats really. And that's not good. The fourth thing that I would say that sucks is they run out of food very quickly. And that's more of a concession issue. But usually, if you go to like pay-per-views or house shows, what usually happens is that usually around like 9:30, everything's done, they all shut down, and usually it's because of that type of thing of that people need to go home. But honestly, that's not really good. Like imagine if WrestleMania was going to be from like 8 p.m. to midnight, and they said, okay, well, at 9 o'clock, we don't have any more food, get lost. That's not really a good choice, to do that. You should have more concessions. I would say like, do 1.5 more or 1.25 more and see what happens really. And then also too, you can always sell like drinks in like AEW, like cups or like popcorn tins with like AEW wrestlers on it, just to kind of like maybe charge an extra $2 or $3 to AEW type of thing really. But the fact that they run out of the fact that their arena shows run out of food really quickly is not that good. The fifth thing that I would say is unprofessional staff. That I remember like when Ric Flair came out, you saw like there were like two kids like behind the scenes that were like Ric Flair was walking out down the entrance ramp. And then you kind of could see backstage, there were a bunch of like kids like taking selfies and whatever. Like definitely that's not appropriate, because the issue is that if you do something like that, it makes your company look very unprofessional. Why would you do something? Why would you have your people do that? That's not a good look for the company. And the sixth thing that I would kind of say is unprofessional production. Like sometimes, because I know like sometimes when they had Rampage, they would forget to have the pyro, so they make the pyro go off during the middle of the show, Sometimes when they want to turn on the monitors, they may just turn it on randomly during the show, and that's actually not appropriate because that makes it look like a high school production. And I would also kind of would say that sometimes the microphones would not be up really, so they honestly need to kind of like just really either fire people on the spot like Vince does, or then you kind of say like, okay, well, you know what, you need to be growing, and then after like 3 months you're not really growing, you need to go because that's not appropriate because like you need to just not be doing that. And then the other thing that I would say is that they do their pay-per-views usually in the same areas. Like it's usually California. It's usually in California or Chicago, and I understand they had CM Punk, but if you always kind of go to like California and Chicago, that's always not good because it's almost like saying that's the only states. Like I've said before, it's good that they're going to Greensboro. They can easily go to Florida. They can do more shows in New York City. They can also do some shows, in Washington or Louisiana or other places. I think that if they get big attendance in certain areas, definitely have pay-per-views there, but it can't just be California, and it can't be the Chicago area. Yes, and then also too, they kind of said that they want to do All Out in Chicago every single year. So the problem is that if you do that in Chicago, what happens when you're always going to Chicago? And I would kind of also will say that. That the three other things, I think I did like 7 things so far, but the 3 other things that I would kind of would say is Rampage and ROH are not that watchable. Like honestly, like it does kind of feel like you're having extra matches. So I do think that it does get kind of boring. A lot of people usually walk out. There should be some feuds with that, and I think that that's very, very important, And then within that, I would say is that they have over-reliance on gauntlets. Like, there's way too many gauntlets at AEW or over-the-rope matches. Like, if you're kind of doing that, like, usually they do that probably every month and a half, and that's very, very frequent. And either that's a way to feature everybody, it's just kind of annoying. And then also, too, that's just a way to kill 30 minutes on Rampage. And I would say, like, the main thing that I would also kind of say is that I think they have way too many preliminary matches. I think that especially for their pay-per-views, because like again, like if you're watching like AEW and the pay-per-view already has like 11 matches and you have 4 preliminaries, that's a lot to go through. And then I also think that sometimes with the preliminary matches, they're not really that must-see unless they're actually a feud. And sometimes what you do is you may take the Acclaim versus Jeff Jarrett or Eddie Kingston versus Jay Lethal, something that should have a lot of time, and then there's no build. There's just, you're going to have the match, and that'd be that, really. So I think they missed a lot of opportunities. Like if you had like 2 preliminary matches with a feud and with them talking on the microphone how they want to have another match or another opportunity, that's actually good. If you're, because as I said, if you over-rely on just matches, that's not good at all, really. So I just think that there's a lot that AEW can learn from, and definitely I think that their house shows really need to improve. There are a bunch of positives. Like definitely if you're in the front row, if you get those seats, sometimes you get to high five the wrestlers. I've met like RVD, I've met FTR, I've met MGF, I've met like Jim Ross, I've met like a couple of other people. I met Ric Flair, Bryan Danielson, the Hardy Boys. I meet so many people. That's really, really awesome. And then I also will say that one thing I like about, like when I was in Kia Forum, the where all the wrestlers were, and where the Uber pickup was, where the Uber pickup was, and where the wrestlers were leaving were all in the same area. So everybody had respect for each other, and the wrestlers didn't have an attitude of like, what, get the fuck out of my way. Really, it was just you respect me, I respect you. And then also if they're busy with something, they're busy with something. Like Sting didn't say hi to people, and it doesn't mean that he's an asshole. It just meant that he has other priorities. Or same thing with Ric Flair. He has other priorities. He can't just he can't just kind of just be stopping and signing autographs because like he'll never be able to leave because people would be bothering him. So I like that the wrestlers are professional. I also kind of will say that AEW has the ability to grow and get better. That's actually really important. I also think that what I like is Tony Khan just thanking the audience and everything like that. I think that's very important that he does that. And he continues to do that because that shows that he's passionate. And even like what he did with the Chicago crowd by talking about firing CM Punk, that shows that he's really passionate. And that took a lot of bravery for him to do. And then the next thing that I would kind of say with AEW is that I also like him giving like moments to Antonio Inoki, his family, and then also like other people who've passed away. Really, I think that's very cool that he does that because sometimes there are people like WWE where unless it's a really really big star, they will actually acknowledge the person. Like look, Omaga's death wasn't acknowledged. And a few other wrestlers, like Viscera wasn't acknowledged. So sometimes I like how Tony Khan acknowledges people who passed away, even if it's part of his company or not part of his company. So I think that there's a level of respect. Or even like there was a woman that retired, and she did like all the costumes and stuff like that. So I liked how that person was acknowledged because I've never really seen Vince McMahon ever do something like that, like put in a costume creator or Jim Johnston. Even though he's shy, really, they don't put him. He's not in the WWE Hall of Fame. So I like how there's more respect or telling people like, okay, well, this person's actually the one who was, was the person who was actually behind all that stuff. So I do think that that's actually kind of really cool. So there's a lot of things that they can kind of improve on, and I think that's also really good. I also would say that I do like the pricing of their shows because honestly, I think with all the AEW shows I've been to, usually the tickets run from on average, usually from like $150, $200 all the way to all the way to like maybe a few $1,000s. And also like for World's End, I think that their front row seats were around like 300, 400, which is kind of fair. But what I like about that is it makes it affordable for everybody. It's not like WWE where if you want to get a ringside WrestleMania seat, it's close to $10,000. The big issue is that like Ticketmaster will obviously not give you the tickets if you have a pre-sale. They may just like block it off, or they may just do something where they make it available but then you can't get it. They'll just like trick you into thinking it's available when it's not. But I also will say that I do think there's a lot they can improve on. It's always fun to go to AEW shows. It's fun to go to any professional wrestling show, but they also have to work on getting better. And as I said, that I'm happy that at least they're giving some constructive criticism and said some good sides. But there's definitely some significant issues that they need to improve on.